You should have said, why don't you invite one? And also. Oh, I kind of invite. So I know what you're saying when you're. It's the vibe. It's the vibe. And it was.
I'd like to call the Madison Public Schools Board of Education meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up, we have our school committee session and everybody from the public who would like to speak.
We welcome public comment in person or online via Zoom. We ask that you state your name and address. We limit speakers to 3 minutes in order to ensure that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak. Happy to hear from our community, but at a business meeting, it should not be expected that the board will respond. The public comment period is not a time for public discussion. If necessary, the community member will be contacted for follow-up. If you are joining via Zoom, we ask that you raise your hand and you will be called upon. If we have anyone in person who would like to speak. We have anyone on Zoom who would like to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is Board of Ed student representatives report, and we're very happy to have Lucy and Eli here. Take it away.
Thank you. This Friday at 7 p.m. in the Dining and Assembly Hall, Habitat for Humanity is running a talent show. There's 16 different performances, and I asked one of my friends who's running it, said it's mostly singers. So if you like listening to people sing, it's probably something you would enjoy. The Lightning Thief performance was the spring musical that just happened. Thursday, Friday, Saturday of last week, my little brother went. He said it was really good. So yeah, I think it was well attended, and I think everyone really enjoyed it. We had 2 people come into our school and do an assembly on diversity and belonging. They talked about understanding biases that are just human nature and recognizing biases that we have towards other people and microaggressions and how we can really understand how our words impact others. And junior prom information is being sent out, which is good because that's probably the question I get asked the most by my peers is, when is prom? What's going on? So it's good that that information is finally getting out. I don't have to get asked again.
And prom always kind of signifies the end of the year. And with that being said, May 1st, next Monday, is halfway through the last trimester of school, which is, I can't wrap my head around that. And then the following day, May 2nd, voting registration will be available on the bridge. So I was able to sign up for the previous election because I was 18, but a lot of my peers hadn't turned 18 yet. So now this will be a great opportunity. It's nice that it's so accessible. And then really huge celebration. Last night, our girls lacrosse team beat Guilford. Guilford's always a huge game, but this one just felt a lot bigger. There was some yellow card controversy that stopped the game for a little bit longer than I'm sure everyone would have liked. But ultimately we won 12-9. We had a great student section. And all the other spring sports are also going well. And my last note is that we're in the process of selecting the next Board of Ed student rep. So my time's coming to a close, which I'll be sad to go. But excited to see who comes to fill my shoes.
Have you decided on a college yet, or will you? I kind of figure. So okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Is that because you love it so much?
It is.
That's a great school. Enjoy.
Thank you.
So, does anybody have any questions for the student reps?
This isn't their last day, right?
No, no.
Okay, so we can.
I would have made it sound like that, but you got me. Right, yeah.
Not the last.
No, we get to haze them. That's
Right, right, they don't know that yet.
amazing. Thank you very much, and if you need to do some homework, in anticipation of the very middle of the last trimester, then feel free to split, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Lucy.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the superintendent's report, Dr. Cook.
Just wanted to share one heads up for the Board of Ed, for those online in here. The district is in the process of converting from Microsoft to Google for our email, and so we will be undertaking that process. We'll keep the board update, and we'll have at some point before that happens, or right around when it happens, some training. So we'll bring IT staff in. We don't have a date, but I just wanted to put that out to you all. And I know some of you use Google pretty heavily, and it won't be much of a change. We hope it won't be much of a change for anyone, but we'll give you some more information on that. We have a really special recognition of student who is so well known to the entire district, and certainly at the high school. You can't go to a high school event or a big undertaking and not see Rebecca Wall, who's known as Reedy more commonly, and so we want to thank her for an unbelievable undertaking. I'm going to have Mr. Salvatore talk to this as well, but I think I'm going to put Stephen Penn on the spot. If you don't mind, Stephen, I know you were heavily involved in this process, so I'd like you to join in kind of the recognition for Reedy for her work with TEDx and share a few words.
Yeah, I would love to do that. You know, so much of our time, we talk about curriculum, we talk about independent studies, we talk about the culture and the things that we'd like to see developed for our young people. You know, I have to say my exposure over the last couple of years to these young people, and Reedy in particular, you know, I had asked her beginning the process, so you're doing this project for like an independent study? No. So you're doing it because it's something I care about and I wanted to bring some energy and bring it to it. And that just knocked me out, because what we keep looking for is, are we providing opportunities for young people to take what they've learned as they evolve and really fly, make it their own and do something with it? And, you know, I mean, that's just the involvement in that was amazing. On the other level, my exposure to Reedy, I mean, when I tell you, you know, I mean, I'm a professional person. I have seen very few meetings that were run as well designed, administered, balanced between getting the work done, but also nurturing the people involved. You know, was one of the best I've ever seen. And I look at it and go, here's a young person, she could go into the field tomorrow and get picked up. And then there's this whole host of young people that were doing editing. They took, you know, with all due respect to our principal, who put a lot of energy into it, these kids ran this thing. They took control of it and did just an amazing job. So, you know, I am really pleased that we're recognizing Reedy, but from the standpoint of the board and what it is that we are trying to nurture and cultivate, this is a great example of opportunities for a whole host of young people to really spread their wings and practice some of their skills and take it to another level. So, you know, I was so pleased to see that on the agenda tonight. So thanks for the opportunity for me to be able to say a few words.
And thank you, Mr. Salvatore.
Sure, from here,
Wherever you.
I'll go from here, it's fine, is that all right, sir?
And change my stance.
Not really. So, thanks for the opportunity. Seems like a couple of years ago, Reby came to me and said, we should do a TEDx event at Daniel Hand. I said, yeah, it sounds great. And, kind of having an idea of what an undertaking it would be. And the application process is pretty extensive, to say the least. And Reby submitted that application process on behalf, and we were actually denied. And most students, most adults would say, good effort, and we'll move on from here. Definitely not Reby. She's like, what do you think we need to do differently? I said, give it a shot, and without any input from me, revise the entire application process, which is a daunting step just in itself, submitted, and then you're just kind of on hold. We probably forgot about it,
Yeah.
over some time. And during July of this summer, I was in my office and I got an email from TEDx, and congratulations, you're officially licensed, you're a co-organizer, you and Rebecca Wall. And I'm like, Reby's an incoming senior. I wonder if she's checking your email. Remember, I sent you an email to check your email. Like, literally, in a few minutes later, I got the OMG. I still have the email, the OMG, and then she said, "Can we really do this?" I said, "Absolutely, we definitely do it." And Reby, I was the co-sponsor with her, but she did 90% without question. I was there as a support to help maybe ask some questions as necessary. But this TEDx event, it's truly indescribable, the time commitment that she had to put forward, the leadership, the growth mindset, the willingness to make mistakes, the willingness to listen as a leader, to delegate to her peers, and still keep, and probably made some good friends along the way, and truly watched leaders from our school develop and take on roles where I was really the only adult involved the entire way until the end, when we had to figure out how to make sure all 4 cameras recorded properly. And just for the board's awareness, we're still working on this. Like, Reby has missed a few classes this week in our official editing room to get these videos fully edited, and then we hope they pass the TEDx process. But in my time, which is 20 years now as a principal, I haven't seen a level of student leadership like this at all. And I haven't seen an event as student organized and student run. And it reminds me that, as the adults in a school district, it's our job to turn our kids loose, trust them, support them, and say, we can definitely do this. And Reby, you probably said to me 1,000 times, I'm not sure we can do this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I said, it'll be fine. Are you sure? And are you sure? Are you sure? And you were so impressive. Our event was incredible. It absolutely was. And we're excited to be able to release the actual links once they're approved by TEDx. And I think a lot of people are going to say, wow, that was a school event that you typically don't see an official TED event at a public high school. Very uncommon, and I'm not sure it happened ever in Connecticut before. And a truly amazing event. If I could do anything to have you stay at least another year at Hand, I would. But you'll be incredibly missed. Incredible work. Great.
Okay, well, I obviously can't follow that, guys. And recitatories, I'm so tired of hearing me say this, but it was completely student run, right? Which is something that both of us were incredibly passionate about from the beginning. But I will say, not that I've been in other school districts, but I just don't think that, when you approach someone with a project and they are in such a leadership position as Mr. Tayuteri is, right? He has so much responsibility. And I think, so I feel like you kind of need to rise to the occasion in terms of bravery, right? Because I'm just a student, whatever. And it's easy for me to be like, oh, let's do this TEDx, right? I'm sure I have grades to handle and all this stuff, but there's not this heaps of responsibility on me quite yet. But with Mr. Tayuteri, at least from my perspective, when a student approaches you with that was that huge of a project, and that it's going to make sure that the school's name goes out globally, right? That takes a ton of bravery to actually put trust in that student and not just say, oh yeah, as a district, we appreciate students' input and yada, yada, but not actually make any movements towards that, right? So I think the thing that I was eternally grateful for was just Mr. Tayuteri's bravery and trust in me. I feel like no other adult has that I've been within a quote unquote professional setting, right? Besides my parents, okay. But yeah, gotta make sure. Has actually trusted me that much with something. And when someone trusts you that much and really has so much faith in you, like not just for myself, but like Mr. Salutary does with all our students, your students, it like means so much more than I can put into words. So I think that was kind of the magic of this entire TEDx project, and the thing that I'm going to miss the most is just kind of going through over those 4 years, those daily interactions and learning from your leadership, Mr. Salutary, not just saying that and like really absorbing all that knowledge that you give to me and you know, just being this like selfless leader and everything. So anyways, so I'm rambling on now, but yeah, I think it takes tremendous bravery, and that's something that I'm going to take with me, that when I am in like hopefully a position like yours, and a young person comes to me and wants to do a project and go out on a whim and we don't know if it's going to work, I put my faith in them always, because you have to have the hope that the project's going to become something, or else there's no point in doing anything, right? So yeah.
We can go for the challenge. We'll make a quick presentation to you, this certificate of recognition for everything you do. Thank you. We are eternally grateful for what you've done.
Thank you so much.
You mentioned being eternally grateful. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, we got the up there and.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, I wanted to say, you know, excellent job. I am dying to see the video because I wanted to go. I was traveling that week. I wanted to go so I could heckle Steve as he gave his speech. Unfortunately, yeah, I was unable to, but I can't wait to see it on video. Such an incredible undertaking, such a mature leap that you took, and it really represents the best of what we're trying to support as a board. So it makes us very proud. And
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Dustin. I appreciate that.
thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you so much.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I agree with that.
I would go.
Agent, right? In a great way. Yeah.
Great energy.
Right.
Okay, so we are next at our presentation on school climate, social and emotional wellness presentation from our administration. We've been working on this for a while. This came out of really at least a year-long discussion, but it was framed quite a bit on a board retreat that happened in September, I believe it was, of this school year. And the board had some questions and follow-up on what we are doing. I think you'll be excited to see how much we are doing, and we have our principals to present tonight along with Gail Dallin Hedge. I do want to make a couple important points. I believe, you know, as you start off this process, because I think these might be questions you would have otherwise. We did not focus on adults, and I will say the principals who work very closely with our teachers and our staff think about that all the time. They do not, approach social emotional wellness without thinking about the adults in the buildings. So they do a lot to support our teachers, to our paraprofessionals, our custodians, our administrative assistants, everybody that works in the school district that walks through that door, the way that they approach their day has an impact directly on our students. So I want to thank them for that. But it would be purposely for, the presentation tonight have not addressed that, and be happy to talk about that another time. And then really our academics, so when we think about our students and leaving Daniel Hannan, going on to college and to the workforce and to other avenues, so much of that academic growth, that knowledge base, that problem solving skill comes from our academic work. And if they don't have that, and we just have social emotional, we're setting them up for failure in other ways. So it's really important that curriculum and all that other work. When you talk about adults and their social emotional health, and so much of that is related, they see from surveys and in reports on financial, and so our teaching of financial literacy to our students is such an important piece of their health going forward. And so, you know, that's important. I think when you see this work too, you'll see it builds on itself. And then it is set up to follow them beyond grade 12, because that's, you know, so much of an importance to that. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Gail to kick us off. And I think Seth and I will probably move to the side to be able to see this.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time. I'd like to invite the K through 5 team to the table for the first part of the presentation. I think I want to just start by stepping back and seeing that there is so much parallel work in the Board of Ed priorities, as well as our school development plans around positive school culture. So I just put side by side the outcomes of the board retreat around these priorities that we had in the fall versus the school development plans and school culture plans. So the wording's a little bit different, but in essence, it really is united. Talking about inclusion, respectful discourse, really looking at alternate perspectives, creating self-awareness, opportunities for student voices, just heard one. Equity, agency, opportunity, and really that idea of mental health wellness, dealing with anxiety, depression, and really creating emotionally safe schools. I think it's so powerful to come off of Rebe and her enthusiasm, but also talking about the importance of taking risks in a place where you're supported. And that takes a lot of bravery on her part too. Yourself out here in this huge project and know that at any moment you can fail and that you'll be resilient enough to come up about that and to think about the next plan of action. So I didn't know that she was going to say that before that, but I'm so pleased that she gave us the chance to hear about her work. So hopefully this is familiar to everyone on the board, or most of you on this board, as well as the idea of the plan. So just as a reminder, the school development plans have 4 general areas, and this is one of the 4. So really in looking at social emotional health, you know, what is it? It's really our ability to understand and manage our own emotions and to form social connections and relationships with the world around us. So how do you do that in the school system? That's really created after content. And how do we do that? We do it after educational programming, but also this preventative idea, this thread that says, in order to create a future for kids to be emotionally well and socially well, we have to also equip them with this level of self-awareness, with this recognition of what their own needs are, as well as the information around them that helps them to understand complex issues through the curriculum. And also, you know, what it looks like when you're having struggles in those areas outside of yourself and when others are as well. So we really take this 2-pronged approach. We really want to do our piece in educating, but also to help our students to build their own equity inside of them, their own ability. And that takes a real systematic approach. And our systematic approach always includes, and thank you, Board of Ed, so much, staff development, how we prepare our staff to be our best observers and supporters of our students, the curriculum to actually think about the content and the knowledge and skills, and also the important experiences that kids have as they go through our system. To think also about prevention programs. And I think in my inbox every single day, and I'm sure Dr. Cook experienced the same thing, there's always a new product coming out around social emotional wellness. It is such a buzz program right now. So really thinking both on the building level and also on the district level, what programs are most impactful for our students and for our schools? And then of course, monitoring, being able to see with some degree of transparency, what's happening inside of our schools, what's happening with our kids, what their needs are, and how we can approach that. And of course, all of this we do in partnership with local resources, our Madison Youth and Family Services, as well as the programs and institutions that surround us. So we're really lucky to be in Connecticut. There's a lot of rich opportunity. So as we go through this presentation, we're taking it from a district perspective, as we do with most of our presentations. Then we're bringing it right down to the building level. So you can see kind of the characteristics of the buildings and the implementation in the buildings. So I'm going to start with some of our categories. Oh, and there's my T down below development. Sorry about that. But really kind of taking this two-pronged approach. You've seen, of course, in prior presentations, the importance of our healthy and balanced living curriculum framework and how we're using that for curriculum work. And also how we're taking 2 years to really create this multi-pronged approach to curriculum work. But along with that, staff development, all of those topics that you see in those first 2 lines of bullets, those are covered absolutely every single year across the system in trainings. And these trainings also include assessments. So all of our staff is trained in those topics. And many times there's other topics in addition to this that are specific to a need that we see or something additional that we want to provide. An example of that is last year, we added a training for all staff in trauma-informed instruction. So we did that across the system. And then along with Madison Academy Day is an opportunity across the system. We develop a day at workshops, and we really have teachers be the instructors along with some outside providers. And we survey our staff and we say, what would you like us to focus on? And of course, this was one of the areas of focus. So I just want to take a moment along with Reeby's work on TEDx that happened that day. And that takes 2 of us. Here's just some of the topics that were covered in these breakout workshops. Games and brain breaks for the classroom. The power of suggestion, how to encourage your students to read for pleasure. Productive struggle in math class, how to help students persevere. Productive struggle is okay. Plate spinning 101, the ongoing journey towards balance. Your transgender students. Executive functioning skills in real life. Stress management, motivational messages. So those are just a few of our offerings, and teachers self-select across the district K through 12 into those workshops, and they really develop their skills in social emotional wellness. Now, again, this is all a snapshot of this year alone. And if you look at the calendar and you consider how limited we were in time in professional development, I truly feel we are. We did a lot in this one area in a very lean amount of time. And all of the mandated trainings take at least 8 to 10 hours of training a year. So that's a huge commitment that we do across the district. I'm gonna bring you down to the goals of the wellness curriculum, and we've talked about that a few times. But you will see at the end of the school year, we are actually looking forward to doing some adoptions in this curriculum. And part of those adoptions is tracking of when we hit upon some very important topics. Inclusion, respect for differences, bullying, sexual harassment, suicide. And the color bars that we're creating is not only a tracking of what the topics are and when we hit upon those topics primarily, but also who's the provider. And I'm not gonna guess, like, I think one's blue social work and pink is counseling and purple is both, or a 2-pronged approach. There's another color for health. But we are actually tracking for our presentations, like what does that spiral look like? When do kids get the different topics? And how do we incorporate it? And they all are included in other areas of curriculum as well. Along with that, we also look at prevention programs. Our team as of administrators actually engaged in training over last summer from Darren Graves in critical consciousness, Rachel Gabriel, driving equity through literacy. And then our committee, our district-wide committee, has selected Rydell Harrison for training for all administrators and faculty during 2 years, over the course of 2 years. And I believe Eli hit upon those presenters. That was the first prong of that presentation for the high school. So that was Rydell Harrison. We had lots of our committee members attending those student sessions, and all of our faculty and administrators will be trained over a period of a couple times on different modules, different important modules. Along with that, what are the prevention programs? And you've heard me talk before about buying one program and it being limited to whatever that one program offers. We take a look at lots of programs and we thoughtfully include the most important parts and the most relevant parts in our program. So Alice is a response training for a crisis situation. We'll go through that more in our next meeting. But you've heard of Sandy Hook Promise and Choose Love. They both have an abundant curriculum available to us. We met with both of those providers earlier in the year, and we met with our curriculum lead, and we're including some of their work in our lessons. Responsive classroom advisory, Pride. We're installing a 5 ropes course at Paulson this summer. And that will enable our students to build more cooperation and collaboration, more respect for others. You'll see other bullets like our district nurse supervisor, the lessons that we're doing, QPR training, which is recognizing and reporting suicide, as well as so many meetings that we have really looking at data and how our students are doing in climate surveys, as well as our other leadership teams that really look at some of the data that we get from the DESA. So down below where it says monitoring impact, that is a survey instrument that we implemented on a state approved track for the past 2 years. The state actually provided what's called a DESA Mini. And the DESA Mini is a really good kind of general survey, but then you can go into a student that flags and you can give them a more comprehensive survey. And if you look at that list down on the left-hand side, it monitors the impact in those categories: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. You can read the list. What we were asking for, in addition to the K-8 implementation of the DESA and the data that comes with it, is we really wanted our high school students to be able to take a survey and get back their own data in a dashboard and be able to see their strengths and areas that they need to build. So I think Madison was the biggest nag in the state, shock. But we were just notified last week that we are going to get the high school DESA, that they did develop state contracts. So we will be in the training and implementation phase in the 9 through 12 next year. We'll be able to administer that DESA. But that one's really students take it themselves and they immediately see their results. So it's a very powerful high school tool.
Could you just explain real quick 2 acronyms, QPR and DESA, what those mean?
Yeah, so I'm gonna get the acronym wrong. Question,
Persuade with work.
thank you. And that is a training that Madison Youth and Family Services actually gives with us. So that's a training to help us to recognize signs of suicide and to report signs of suicide. And what was the other one they wanted?
DESA.
Oh, DESA is the Devereaux early something student warning system. I don't know.
Universal.
Yeah, I don't need to know what it means, what it stands for, but what is it?
It's the company
It's
that
the
actually
company.
has that survey for social emotional wellness in those categories. So the DESA is that monitoring impact bottom piece. That's exactly what they give us. So the DESA also reports, like if you look at the red and blue and green bubbles, how students move when we administer the DESA throughout the year. So sometimes the student might start out in a risk category and they might improve. Sometimes the students who's showing a strength might go and show it as average. So it actually helps us to track students between typical strengths and also in need of further look. And you know, as we go through the course of a year, your needs don't always present the same. We don't have the same emotional journeys throughout the year.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'd like to introduce Becky Frost, who now we're going to go through a building by building unpacking. So I've asked the principals not to repeat anything that I've done, so you don't have to hear that we all do all those trainings, but to add richness to it and uniqueness to their schools. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Frost.
Thanks. Thanks for having us all tonight. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So excited to share some of the things that specifically Jeffrey has tried to tackle and provide students this year to support their social emotional learning. Specifically, if you see that top line, our teachers are surveyed every spring about the needs they see for our students, just anecdotally and through their classroom data. And teachers were overwhelmingly vocal last summer about the fact that our students are really giving up too easily. When they get to a task that seems a little bit too hard, they're shutting down quickly, and I need help figuring out how I can help them to persevere. So our Jeffrey School leadership team decided that this would be our school-wide goal for this school year. So you can read the goal up there, and then you're going to see through lines of that through all of the 4 areas that Gail spoke about. To get our staff to get really good at teaching students how to have a growth mindset and persevere, we knew we would have to engage in an inquiry of it. We did that through staff book clubs, through instructional rounds, through trainings for our para educators who are so integral in being, on the front lines with kids when they are struggling. We had our own Jeffrey mini Madison Academy Day where we talked about sessions such as, when do you rescue students' thinking and when do you let them struggle? Gail talked about the DESA administration of our social emotional universal screen. The DESA company actually has a bunch of lessons in the portal that teachers can access to then teach into those needs. Some teachers took time that day to actually look through the lessons and pick out ones that were appropriate for their students. Our school psychologist held a session on how to handle student frustration and good reminders of de-escalation strategies. In terms of our curriculum, where students are getting direct instruction, a lot of this work and conversation about growth mindset and what do you do when you get stuck and what are some strategies you can use, that really takes place in the daily morning meetings and daily closing circles. Kids reflecting on, when did you hit a struggle? What did you do when you had that bump in the road today? How did you make a plan? So that students can start learning from each other and that becomes part of their everyday language in the classroom. Thanks to our full-time social worker, our school counselor, our school psychologist, and our PAL special education teacher, they are a dynamite team. And when a need arises in a particular classroom, they are there to offer push-in lessons. So for example, I had a kindergarten in particular, a classroom that was struggling a little bit. And my social worker and school counselor co-taught 6 weeks of zones of regulation lessons specific to the needs of that classroom. We also collaborate in many ways with Madison Youth and Family Services. For example, mindfulness lessons. We refer students to their zones of regulation groups, as well as scope referrals for parent education. And we also did a school-wide assembly, the NED Growth Mindset Assembly, which stands for Never Give Up, Encourage Others, Do Your Best, just as more of kind of a rah-rah celebration to throw in.
Just real quick, another
Yeah.
definitional question.
Sure.
Can you please explain zones of regulation?
So zones of regulation is a tool that teachers use to teach kids how to regulate their emotions. Essentially, you're teaching them emotions fall into 4 categories and students sort of self-reflect. Am I in the green zone? Am I in the red zone? And they build a toolbox of strategies of how to get from the red zone back to a green zone, back to a calm state.
Pretty sure DESA also is Devereaux Emotional Student Survey Assessment. I was like. Leave that.
Can we go to the next slide?
You have none.
Oh, I'm sorry. We also offer a wide variety of prevention programs, again, some tied to that growth mindset goal, but also just to encompass all areas of social emotional wellness. We offered unified sports and cheerleading. Our PTO offered over 83 before and after school workshops for kids to sign up for, and 229 Jeffrey students participated in at least one workshop this year. So again, just another way for them to feel connected to our school. For kids where the math and reading and writing is tough, but they could come play chess in the morning with a teacher, just really helps build those relationships. Our counselor runs lunch bunches. We have buddy classes paired up. Our 3rd graders are paired up with reading and math buddies with kindergartners. We continue our positive office referrals. We have 4 students being officially mentored by a Daniel Hand student, which is phenomenal. The kids are down in the office at 2:30 every Monday of when is my mentor coming? When is my mentor coming? And heaven forbid the mentor has a midterm to take and I have to wait the news to them, but we're really appreciative of their efforts.
We really made sure that every classroom at Jeffrey School has a calm corner, even related arts classrooms, the library. And we had a big student-led initiative this year. Our Kindness Club implemented a Cool to Care week. So it was a whole week of activities and reflections and books and bulletin boards and buddy bench initiatives of just cool to care, cool to be kind. Obviously, we don't want to do all this work for nothing. So the last bit there are the ways in which we kind of assess, is this working? We have weekly SST meetings to look at student progress. Our mental health team meets together at least monthly. So it's really daily if you get down to it. We did administer the DESA twice. We just got back all of our results of our school climate survey. We have attendance every Monday. And again, our PLC meetings are built in for grade level teachers 2 times a week to just kind of pick up any other pieces that might be missing.
Who fills out the school climate surveys, parents or students?
Parents, students, and teachers.
Okay.
And every school did that this spring. That's actually a state mandate to do it every other year. A lot of us do it every year. And there are 6 questions on those surveys that are state mandated that we ask of all students, all parents, and all teachers in the district. Any other questions?
When you said that every student was evaluated, so you mean the DESA mini?
Correct. Yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit.
Thank you.
Auntie Kelly?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity tonight. I'm pleased to share on behalf of Ryerson tonight, the 2 bullets at the top on what our goals are for school culture and climate. They're directly linked to our school improvement plan. We have a very strong leadership team at Ryerson School and a strong social emotional team that came together and really wanted to look at what we have existing in place, such as responsive classroom, our social emotional curriculum, and looking at providing that consistent communication, opportunities for student choice and flexible thinking. And so taking those ideas that are at the heart of our curriculum and how we inform and educate our students, we came up with fostering an environment where every person is feeling responsible for advancing diversity and inclusion, and that being both adults and children, and really creating that environment in the classrooms of students and staff feeling empowered to take risks and grow. And that happens through staff development, through collegiality and conversations and collaborations amongst teams and vertically across our settings. We have found the most effectiveness in carrying out that through our instructional rounds that we held both in the fall and in the winter. In the fall, we have done years of work in responsive classrooms, so we wanted to take a pause and say, okay, what is the level of teacher language and what is the level of feedback that is provided to our students so that they are very clear on what they are doing and where they can go next. And so a group of teachers within our building visited all classrooms, looking at what they were noticing and seeing and hearing from our students and our teachers. And then we came back and set the course for the next level of work, where we had our Madison Mini Academy in November, that based on what our findings were, how could we elevate teacher practice in that area? 3 workshops were provided and were all led by different teachers in our building. So I thought that that was pretty fantastic, is they're learning with their colleagues and from their colleagues. So we offered some in productive struggle in math. I will just note that productive struggle comes from a book on productive struggle in math that our coaches began with the teachers. This learning has really cascaded into many classrooms and many teachers. And one of our teachers said, hold on a second, I don't only struggle in math, I struggle throughout the day. And I bet so do our students. So we've kind of shifted that thinking to be in all facets of the day.
Another area that two teachers offered was they called working through it. And it's when we are dysregulated, how to regulate our emotions. That was another one offered. We continued that practice again in the winter, focusing on, focusing on small group instruction, and flexibility and differentiation. Again, we provided another professional development workshop based on the results of that winter walkthrough, looking at providing small group instruction and giving kids more voice and choice in those small group flexible work. In the curriculum, I just shared a little snapshot. Our social worker, school counselor, and psychologists are all assigned to different grade levels. And that means that they're getting to know the students very well, working with the teachers very well. And they're in those classrooms, co-teaching lessons. One of them may be in grade 1, teaching the size of the problem. So is your reaction matching the situation? That's a lifelong skill for all of us, right? But that's something that's being taught at our grade 1. I meet regularly with the school counselor, social worker, and psychologist to get information from them as to what are we noticing at each of the grade levels, what needs to be our next line of focus, conflict resolution. And our kindergartners, not a shock, we need to keep our hands to ourselves when we're upset, and how do we support that? So it's ongoing, and I have full confidence in that team that they regularly are able to meet those needs, both for teachers as well as for the students. Here it is all about how we as the adults can create that safe school environment where all of our children feel known and belong, and are able to feel that their voice is being heard. So how do we do that? We're very proud of our grade 3 future leadership teams. Is every student in 3rd grade has an opportunity for a leadership role in the school. Our 3rd graders are in charge every day of morning announcements. It is live, and all of our school comes together. Each day is a theme. We start out with Motivation Monday. So it kind of sets the tone for the week. We have trivia. We share a common book on Thursdays. We also have where's the tiger throughout the state, throughout the nation, and so we get clues for that. So it brings us together as a community. We have peer buddy programs, academic and social emotional. We also, our responsive classroom, as Mrs. Frost talked about, we have take a break areas, our morning meeting, quiet time, closing circle. We've really worked as a team as well as to enhancing that closing circle. That closing circle is a great pause at the end of the day for all students to share what went well, what was difficult, and what's my goal for the next day. So very proud of the teachers who make that as a must do at the end of the day. We hold many before and after school workshops for students. We had 7 winter workshops that were provided by the PTO, 5 spring workshops that were provided. We have our unified sports team that has just kicked off again to get ready for that culminating event with all the unified sports teams K-5 at the end of May. And as Becky indicated, monitoring that progress. How do we do that? We administer the DESA, the Devereaux assessment twice a year. We have in both rounds identified less than 5 students, and both times, both in the fall and spring, the student or a student who had flagged in the full DESA, we only had 1 student that we had not already had in some level of supports and services. So we began our student support team process, and both those children are receiving necessary supports that they need. And again, the same types of processes. We have our SEL team that I talked about that meets monthly, PLC that meets weekly, our data team meetings, and our student support team meetings. So in our little school on the hill, I don't think any student gets lost and doesn't have the supports and needs provided that are necessary. Thank you. Questions, or are we waiting to the end? Clicker. Thanks.
You know, I'm sitting listening to Kelly Beck, and I'm trying not to be redundant, although it will be. But, you know, social emotional awareness and wellness, as well as academic placement for us, starts with the teaming on with the placement. And we don't do it in isolation. Becky and Kelly and their team do a tremendous job of placing kids with peers, with teachers, so they can be successful. And then we do the same thing, you know, 4 to 5, and I know they do it 5 to 6 because I was at Polson. One thing I'll say about Madison through the years that I'm really proud of, and I know this because I've been doing it for a long time, every student is talked about. Not just, oh, you know, give me the ones with the, you know, high scores in math, and we'll put every student, right, Henderson. Okay, and it's a process. We're going through it now. We talked about, you know, hearing lists, and we went through it with Polson, and Catherine was over at Brown multiple times. So I think it's important that people realize that it isn't just, okay, we'll have a balance of male and female, we'll have a balance of this, and we'll have, you know, 20 in a class, and it works. Every student is discussed what's a good teacher match, what's a good peer match. They make sure that students come to us with the friendships, and when this is the first time we're merging the grade as before. So much time and effort goes into that, and I appreciate everybody's hard work on that. This year, Brown, we did something that I haven't done. We've been visiting authors. We've never done something that had such a long thematic work for us. We had a visiting author come to us. Well, prior to that, we purchased the book Invisible Thread for all of our staff, every one of them, and they read that to the students over a period of months. And we, you know, food insecurity is the theme in the book. So during that time, we were having a food drive. Worked with Madison Food Pantry, who's always been a partner when I was at Polson and at Brown, and they certainly appreciate everything. But that did a lot for our kids. And then when we did have our author visit, she spoke to both different grade levels, signed books well into the afternoon, so much so we had so many books we had to send the kids home, and I sat with her and we delivered them all the next day. So that was a very strong, impactful part of our year, and all students pledged different acts of kindness and support of each other. So, you know, that's something we're going to look to continue as we move forward next year. We're hoping to have her back or a colleague of hers back. In terms of prevention programs, you know, we have a great partnership with Madison Youth and Family Services. Justin comes up to our school regularly, offers a couple of programs during the school day, after school. As Kelly and Becky mentioned, Unified Sports is growing and growing. We're actually, it's made prior to the big event with the 3 schools. We're playing another school, so I told them anything less than a victory is unacceptable. They're winning in fight game. Now HK is going to come down, right? But we have more kids wanting to be part of that, and we practice once a week, so it's great. You know, trying to not be too redundant. You know, one of the things I'm doing since we've received our data from our student surveys is have representatives from different homerooms in our 4th grade talk about areas that we want to get better at. For example, you know, students who may feel excluded in something. So we need to talk to our kids, why is that happening, and what can we do? And you know, kind of like the Reeves of the world, what can they do? What can they take ownership of and make a change? And we'll be there to support that. In terms of monitoring impact, again, you know, we keep using DESA. Well, I think the board knows we send the information on the DESA home to every family. So this is just something we do. Students who flag and we do the longer DESA, they have different plans, but every family receives DESA feedback, so it's not just something we keep inside, we share that with all of our families. And again, we all do our attendance review to make sure students are connected to school, and if they're not coming to school or private parties, we want to know why. We have our social worker contacting parents. Our student data, our survey data, you know, one of the big focuses for me is these kind of our questions, students who feel they have at least one close friend, students who feel safe at school, students who feel they have an adult they can connect with. Our numbers are really strong in those areas. So parents know they can access professionals at school if they need that. Do they know what we have? So that data is important to us, and parents feeling that their kids are connected to school. Our school counselor, she does a tremendous job. You know, she's part of developing the wellness curriculum with Gail's team. She's visiting classrooms in grades 4 and 5. She's finished that throughout the course of the year, talking about stress, friendships, and overall social emotional health. I think there's 4 lessons per grade, so she was all things for cameras. We continue with our pause, where we kind of call a timeout. Our focus is on patience, achievement, understanding, success, and empathy, and we develop lessons in all of our classes. We do it during morning meeting. Again, our climate surveys. You know, I put in here, and we had, as Gail mentioned, we had a lot of great presenters at the Madison Academy. If you want to take the time to, Travis LaPointe did a really nice job with these motivational messages through stories. There's some really inspiring clips in there. So if you click on that, you could probably read a couple, especially the one about Ernie Johnson. It's tremendous. And then our mindfulness, and that's part of the wellness curriculum that I know Gail and the team are developing. We have representatives from Madison Youth Services come to our classroom, our different classes, and deliver mindfulness lessons to help students just understand when they have to kind of call time out and some of the things they can do. So, you know, there's a lot going on in all of our schools. I'm proud of what we've accomplished this year. Some of it's very formal, and then there's our teaming model too, where our teachers, 2 teachers, have approximately 40 to 42 students, and they meet daily talking about those students. Guidance is involved, social worker, school psych. And again, as Kelly said, hoping no one slips through the cracks, so I'm pretty confident of that.
Welcome to high school. Want to come? Welcome.
That's all about.
Well, we'll build a cast of time.
TJ already got one.
Nice of you, T.
Team play.
Yeah, leave it to like.
Sit in the wing.
Overanalyze and share information. We're so dumb.
All right, so moving on to Pulsar. Again, you'll hear some similar things that I'll briefly touch on, and then hopefully some new things as well. So the social emotional wellness of our kids, we know that really has to be intact before they can learn. Because if it's not, then they're not really available to do that learning during the school day. So that really is the underlying premise behind all of this too. And when I sit here and hear what everybody else is doing, I find myself like adding more and more notes on, and so things that we do, and some of it we just do because that's the right thing to do, and some of it is an effort that we deliberately set forth and have goals towards. So in terms of staff development, we have the training that everybody else has, but we as a school had decided to do some more training on neurodiversity, and actually that was delivered by a parent of a Pulsar student. Working on what are the social emotional challenges of our students, having that middle school mindset, what does that mean? And we're fully aware that a 6th grader is different from an 8th grader, that fall is different from spring. That is sort of a given that we acknowledge. Worry versus anxiety. And some of this is presented not just to staff at a faculty meeting or during a PD day, but also to our paraprofessionals, where we have monthly meetings that we meet with them. And there's always a topic of training that sometimes they ask for, sometimes we acknowledge a need for, or staff will say this would be a good topic to share with people. Another acronym for you, PMT, which is Physical and Psychological Management. We have several staff members, administrators, all of the special assignment paraprofessionals, special ed teachers that are trained to first verbally de-escalate a student. So if somebody is, as in with the zones of regulation that Becky talked about, if they are escalated, then the first step is to try to help them to calm down. So that is something we have a lot of people trained in. Like every other school, we have social emotional SSTs on a regular basis. And we not only get updates on students who are receiving interventional support in that, but also bring new students to the table for discussion as we need to as well. The Madison Academy you've heard about, and as Dr. Cook said at the beginning, there's a lot of opportunities that we have for staff wellness. That's a whole nother discussion because we'd be here for a lot longer as well. And we are looking at the school climate survey results as everybody else is, and we review that not only as administrators, but we review with our leadership team as well. And we set our goals, we recognize what our strengths are, share that out with the staff, and then set goals for next year based on that data as well.
In curriculum, as you know, we always are hitting elements of social emotional wellness through standard content curriculum, through language arts and reading and writing and social studies and the understanding of history and social issues. We also have a counseling curriculum, and that's really what we're highlighting tonight. So in 6th grade, there's nothing like navigating the unchartered, unstructured social maelstrom of lunch in a middle school. And this is not a joke. So our grade level counselor in grade 6 really has like a mini curriculum that she does during lunch. And there are 3 lunch bunches during the week, social skills, interacting, safe play, if you will. But my favorite is spa day, and that's new this year, a spa lunch, because they talk about mindfulness and relaxation techniques and stress management. And it's just a new level that they've done, and it's great. In grade 7, we touch upon some difficult concepts, the harassment, social media, connecting with someone online that you don't know. It gets into a new level for the students, and we're very cognizant of the psyche of our children, of our little humans when we deliver this. But we're kind of excited because the wellness curriculum is really digging deep next year into something we call personal safety and boundaries in grade 7. And that will talk about the repercussions of harassment and bullying, and really the link to online safety, and they're so connected. So we're excited about that next year. In grade 8, huge focus on transition, you can imagine, to secondary education and beyond. So yes, we're talking about career inventories, and we talk about their long-term goals and their values and what they value. So different than just how much money do you want to make, what job are you going to get? And you might say, how does a career readiness link to social emotional? But we all know in this room, to know that you have a purpose, to know that there's something you can do and you can contribute to the world, that feeds right who we are. So it really is part of the social emotional wellness. So.
In terms of prevention, as we said, some of this is driven by staff and their ideas, our leadership team, conversations that we have, and some of it is driven by students, which we really try to embrace, as you heard, like the high school does as well. And through this, some of it is formal, some of it's informal. We are super excited about the ropes course coming in fall of 2023. I will be out there in August, and the kids are excited about it, which is great. We continue to have various reporting apps. The See It, Say It, Send It app is used as needed, but I would say more often it's kids coming to report to a staff member that they're comfortable with, whether it's a counselor, social worker, administrator, teacher. The whole point of having somebody else that they feel comfortable talking to if they need to is really emphasized. We have the continued partnership with Madison Youth and Family Services. They put a bulletin board up, the students put it up, and they, during lunch, will sign that acceptance pledge of what does this mean, examples of kindness.
And it's been a little bit different each year because that is student driven, that how they do the project and what they're looking for is determined by that group. In addition to that, we have a rainbow lounge that students can choose to go to for lunch once a week. There's different leadership opportunities that are connected throughout the school day and then after school as well. We've, as Gail mentioned, the random acts of kindness start with hello. They're woven into many aspects of the school year. The athletic and the athletic and academic clubs are very popular. Some of them we know we're going to have this these set interscholastic sports or what season they are and who can participate. And other times kids will come down and say, hey, Mrs. Hart, I want to start flag football. What do I need to do? And I explain to them, and you need this many people, we'll make it happen. And I think that that's a result of one this year that 3 girls came to meet with me in the fall and got all their ducks in a row. And now we've got a co-ed flag football team playing, which is awesome. The Game Changers Mentoring Program was actually initiated by the social worker who has been connecting with Madison Youth and Family Services as well, did some research of surrounding towns that had this, and then worked with our staff internally to identify students who would be a match with a mentor in the community. And that could be for a whole variety of reasons. And then they come in once a week and they have that one-on-one time with a student. We make the time during the school day for them, and really is starting to build some relationships there. And the hope is that it will be able to continue over time with that connection. The Student Academy was initiated by the student leadership team. Started last summer when the conversation was, what skills are our kids missing? What are we seeing that we've got some problems with them staying organized, or that executive functioning? They're having certain types of conversations with each other, sending an email that doesn't look like a text to a friend, but really is an email to a teacher. So again, the leadership team designed that and rolled it out to staff first, and then every staff member shared it with all of the students in the school, every grade, and then revisits it throughout the course of the year. So it's not just, we'll tell you once in September and hope you remember it in April. We also added that group as having monthly school-wide assemblies that were really meant to build community that might be educational. They may be exposing them to different types of cultural music, or they simply could be for fun. One of our most popular one was a Family Feud this year, that we had students from each of the grade levels doing it. We had staff doing it. And even today we had a Principals Advisory Council. We asked for one of their favorite memories from the school year. That continues to be one of the favorite, as does a much obviously more serious topic of the Holocaust survivor. It's memorable to the students and they hold on to that. And that's what we want. We know that when they look back, are they going to remember the lessons on multiplying fractions? No, but they're going to remember those relationships, the people, and who makes them who they are today and the impact they had. Again, our World Day, that was through our diversity club that the students decided this is what we want to do. They met with me, they met with the advisors, they created it, and I gave them the space to do it. So that's one of the many ways that we're trying to foster that and continue to build that. In terms of monitoring impact, here are 3 objective things we've done this year. The DESA, which you've heard about now and know. I will share with you that in our winter screen, 3% of the students at Polson did flag as in need of some education or teaching. And the greatest needs were in goal-directed behavior, personal responsibility, and self-awareness. Those were the 3. So where we go from that is then we have a team of people that come up with a plan. So it starts with Catherine and myself. So admin, grade level counselor, school counselors, so the social worker or school site, a team of teachers, we bring in the family. It is truly a well-rounded plan that we put in place for these students because we don't like the fact that they flag. So we put plans into place and we track those and their effectiveness as well.
Can I ask, is that an opportunity to identify students who may be at risk to exhibit bullying behavior?
I think I would have to look at the relationship between bullying, say, and not being able to take personal responsibility or not having self-awareness. So I can't tell you right now that there's a correlation between the DESA elements and bullying. I mean, certainly, I think if we're helping them to build their own self-esteem and self-awareness and personal responsibility, I would like to tell you would lead to less bullying, but I don't know. I can't tell you right now there's a correlation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nature of my question is, I think we need to recognize that one way to address bullying is to promote kindness and inclusion and respect for others. But another way is to address the students who may have needs, who are at risk of exhibiting bullying behavior. And if we can get to them, especially in middle school, right? Before they get to high school, before it becomes more pronounced, then, I mean, that's something that I'd be interested in seeing some attention given to. And again, I understand that DESA may not be geared towards that, but maybe I would request that from Brown on up, leadership consider in future plans addressing at-risk students' needs who are at risk for actually being the bullies. Because I think, you know, if we can show them some love and teach them to respect themselves or whatever it is that may be causing the behavior in them, that's an alternate way of diminishing that problem as they get older.
Sure, and we can look at the relationship as we've just started DESA really in the last year and a half. We can look at that relationship and trends over the next few years in relation to the, you know, bullying complaints that we might get. And speaking of trends and patterns, I want to move to climate survey. And I want to tell you, climate surveys are not about one group responding on one day. It really is about looking at trends and patterns through the year and through the years. And we feel really strongly about that. And our climate survey results, I just picked 3 of the many questions that I thought really connected to social emotional wellness. Students will stop others from teasing. 82% said yes or sometimes. And so I feel pretty good about that. Students respect diversity. 91% said yes or sometimes. This is a direct result of the Diversity Club, the work with Madison Youth and Family Services, our prevention programs, and honestly, the district, because diversity has been kind of a you know, something that we're looking at here, that we want to show that we respect diversity, honor diversity, and have it. So thank you there. The last one I put in because I'm brave. There are groups that exclude. 30% of students said, yeah, there are. And you know, middle school is like the clique. It's just, I know there are little groups everywhere, but I'm telling you, 6, 7, 8 really is where the cliques seem to thrive, unfortunately. So you might look at that and say, wow, 70% of students say no clique. Well, I'm still mad that there are 30% that think so. So I just want to let you know that we're going to be digging in there because that's too high for me. In the executive functioning survey, this is self-reported. So the students 6, 7, 8 all took an executive functioning survey and self-reported the greatest needs. Grades 7 and 8, top 2 issues, stress tolerance and sustained attention in grade 7 and 8. In grade 6, the top 2, organization and stress tolerance. Of course, we see stress there as the theme, which we continually work on. And so what do we do with this? Well, the counselors have come together, the 3 grade level counselors, and they have looked at the students and created like mini lessons with them. So they're running groups this spring that are targeting specific students that self-reported issue, and they're kind of talking about it, and they have different groups that they do and helping the students to increase their organization as an example. So executive functioning is something we just really dabbled in this year. We're kind of excited about next year. We've learned so much already this year, and we're excited about doing it for next year as well. And I'm just going to end this one. This is the objective way, but I'm telling you, subjectively, we monitor the impact every day. Every person is looking at every student walking through our halls and being in our rooms, and we're always monitoring. And I think that's important for you to realize.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank the Board of Ed for giving us an opportunity, as well as thanking Mr. Bodger and Mrs. Butcher for joining me this evening. We're going to share some components that we pulled from our school development plan and just if you look at that top piece that talks about the DHHS leader team created and is now implementing. The entire school is implementing the school development plan, but it is worth noting our leadership team not only is made up of all the coordinators and administrators in our building, but we invite all of the other faculty members who are in the process of or have recently attained a degree in educational leadership to be part of that process that starts in June of the end of each school year, leading into the next school year. So we have over 20% of our faculty involved in that process. And the two particular areas we thought we'd highlight tonight, right at the top, was working with all stakeholders, with a focus on the safe, positive, respectful, and inclusive culture that ensures students feel safe and feel supported. And, I was pretty pleased with what Rebe said. I had no conversation with her prior to, this evening. I said, you can probably say something if you like, but she did a really nice job, taking risks over the course of her high school career and really felt supported, which I appreciate hearing that. And then also to make sure all members of our school community feel like they're physically and emotionally safe. And it's a really positive environment conducive to learning. Some of the staff development we have focused on, the first one is really important. The development of a risk assessment protocol for suicidal ideation. We use that more than you would think, but we want to make sure our students are okay. And that QPR training, allows us to be very direct in asking questions to students to see if they're okay. And it's proven to be very supportive for students, and a lot of communication takes place between faculty and families as well. We follow the CASTLE framework, and you can see what that acronym stands for, to drive our advisory lessons. Gail sent us an email over April break. We were really excited about the DESA piece, coming to the high school next year. Although that information is very new, just a couple of weeks old, I could see us using a lot of those components in advisory next year as well, which is a perfect fit. We revised our student support team protocols and procedures, so there's more consistency. Melanie, when we get to the next slide in a few minutes, will elaborate on the different procedures and the protocols that we follow and the different SSTs that we use. We had a high number of our teachers participate in Madison Academy, just like the rest of the district. We also ran our TEDx event that day, so we had a lot of teachers attend. A few teachers actually presented as well. A really great day overall. And unlike the K-8 schools that have the Safe School Climate Survey requirement every 2 years, when you are going through the NEASC accreditation process, there's additional surveys that are required that are very different, that we sent out to students, parents, guardians, and staff. Everyone got those. And they were prior to the collaborative visit that took place in the fall. That data helped drive the self-reflection report. The visiting team from the NEASC Commission took a lot of interest in the survey results. And then I believe the Board of Ed saw the final report that was recently delivered to us by the commission, as well as our school improvement plan. So those surveys proved to be very helpful, and they have a different approach than the focus of the Safe School Climate surveys, but our staff spends a lot of time reviewing those, and we use the responses from our school community members to drive our goals for the upcoming school year. What we're excited about, although it's certainly a heavy topic, on May 9th, just in a couple of weeks, we have 2 intelligence analysts coming from the FBI to do a presentation titled Partnering to Prevent School Violence. Martha and I went to a local or an area high school that was planning this presentation, and we both left and we thought it'd be a great fit for the high school especially. And I actually went to the presentation to that high school's faculty. Excellent. It's a proactive approach to preventing school violence. Like, we're all trained in ALICE. That's a reactive, obviously if something serious is happening, that a violent issue is going on in a school. This is the proactive approach, and that somewhat aligns to what you were talking about in identifying who might need support. And obviously the goal here is preventing school violence. Dr. Cook reached out to some local agencies and invited them to this presentation as well. I hope it's very well attended. Our entire staff will be there on May 9th. And I already attended the presentation. I thought it was excellent. And I'm excited that the FBI is offering this to us, and they offer it up to all local school districts. And we're taking advantage of that in a really positive way. Curriculum, we decided to pull out a piece that, Gail does a lot of work with the curriculum, and we appreciate that.
Can you just That, the FBI program, is that for staff and teachers, or is that also for students?
That
It's an
is
assembly.
for staff and teachers and other community members.
Okay.
That
So the school, we can go, we can.
That would be through the superintendent of schools. We have more than enough seats. And
So that might have.
right, so
I get it.
so that's the FBI. It was based on 20 years of data that has been collected around school violence. And it's a
Eye-opening, I would imagine.
you know, I left motivated from it, not worried, you know, the topic of school violence usually, you know, your heart sinks a little bit anytime you hear it. This is the preventative approach, you know, how to identify and then provide support, you know, by a community effort, which is really nice. That's why I was appreciative that we got invited to, you know, one of the local school districts to see if this was something that would be a good fit for us. And then to bring it to our district, I think is really appropriate. And I appreciate Dr. Cook taking, you know, lead in inviting, you know, some other agencies as well, like police, for example, to be in attendance. Because again, anything we can do proactive around school violence is obviously the direction we want to go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So back to the curriculum piece, a lot of work is being done, just every single year we said that, Gail. A lot of work is being done around curriculum, and we thought we would pull a unit that is being developed in the wellness curriculum that is being worked on by our school counselors, PE and health teachers. You can see this particular unit has a focus on students being really reflective about their own well-being, you know, setting some future plans and how to understand themselves a little bit more and really learn how to reflect on how to identify, you know, good stress versus bad stress, because there are two different types. And what types of healthy strategies can they identify and learn to use to address those different levels of stress? And then ultimately, you know, being able to identify when stress becomes too overwhelming and they need support, you know, what does that look like and where can they get that support? So we're looking forward to that curriculum moving forward and being implemented. The teachers and counselors who have been involved have been doing a lot of great work. And I think it's going to be directly related to a lot of our goals as we move forward next year. So those are just some of the examples around the staff development piece as well as the curriculum. I'm turning it over to Melanie at this point.
Thanks, TJ. So in addition to the two school-wide goals that TJ shared previously, there are two additional goals up top that we just wanted to highlight for you. Specifically, these goals are around creating opportunity for student voice, opportunity for student leadership. So not to continue to echo, but some of what Rebbie said, but how can we foster that in many of our young people? Like, how can we go from just having that opportunity for one student, but having it for many others? So some of the ways that we're doing that is through some of the prevention programs that are listed. Instead of going through some of the repetition that you've heard from some of the other buildings already, I'm going to talk a little bit about how specifically it focuses on hand. As you know, we have a new advisory program this year, and we offer Wellness Wednesday as a continuation. We have a student advisory board that we started to get off the ground. That's going to be a focus for next year, is really creating opportunity for student voice as to what these lessons will entail. In addition to that, we've been incorporating more student-led sessions. So in the advisory lessons themselves, we have student leaders that will turn the lesson over to them when applicable and where they feel comfortable to help lead the sessions. Just to make it more relatable to their peers. They listen to adults talk all day long. So I think hearing it from their peers and having those connections with one another is where we're going to see the majority of our impact in those sessions. TJ mentioned a revision of our SST process. So 2 years ago, we sat down as a team and said, what do our students really need? And we realized that the needs of our students were very diverse, but not all the same in terms of when we had these meetings, we can't talk about every kid all in the same light. So we broke it up into three basic groups, I guess I would say, three smaller committees. One specifically focuses on mental health. And so that is with all of the school counselors, all of the professionals in the Helping Hands hallway. The nurse attends those, Brian and I attend those. And we review students that we feel like in the moment are currently maybe a student in crisis, maybe a student that needs more support for us, but that meeting is solely focused on supporting students that might have risen to some level of need from a mental health standpoint. The second component is a student review meeting, and that is more academic based, so that's a refocus on students that are currently receiving math intervention, reading intervention, executive functioning intervention. So that's the second meeting, and then the last one is an intervention PLC, and that's where we review data. So I'm going to actually jump down a little bit where you see the student attendance review. So that came out of the intervention PLC. You've heard Gail talk about the data viz that has been added to our Infinite Campus. And so that sort of came out of that implementation of being able to use data viz and extrapolate really student attendance down to who we need to review and focus on most at risk for not attending school, most at risk for failing their classes, etc. And that team meets solely to look at that data and to review it and to make a plan. So those are the three branches that are new and revised beginning September of last year. When NEAS came in and saw our process and reviewed it, they attended some of these meetings as a visiting team. What you see up there about their response, that was literally what was written in the report. They were very pleased to see how thorough that our team was, and also in general, just how we're meeting the needs of students, not just academically, but their mental, emotional, and behavioral interventions. I'm going to jump down to where it says Say Something Week and QPR and Securely, and then athletic programs. All of those are things that we offer for our kids that we feel are prevention programs to help them feel connected to our school. So Say Something Week came out of the Sandy Hook Promise, similar to what that you heard in the elementary schools where they said like this, start with hello. It's that same type of program, but just for the high school level. We had a week of activities around Say Something Week in the beginning of April. In addition to staff being QPR trained at the high school level, we also have students that were QPR trained. So we have peers that are able to also observe warning signs and feel empowered enough to ask really hard questions of their friends if it comes to them thinking about harming themselves or others. So we thought that at the high school level, it's important that not just they have that connection possibly to adults in our building, but again, with one another. That's who they spend the most time with, that's who they're most connected to, and probably who they're going to confide in first before coming to an adult. And then the last component is Securely, and that is just a way that we can monitor what students are doing in their search and browser history. And some students just, think it's kind of funny to check, so they'll type something in and then type in right after that, I'm just kidding, please don't call me down to the main office. And they see that we see that. We still call them down to the main office and they kind of giggle. But in all seriousness, it really does help us to monitor whether or not students are doing some searches for things that might flag, such again as self-harm, harming themselves or others. And then last, we wanted to highlight all of the ways that our students participate in extracurricular activities. So there are 35 athletic programs, of which at least 72% of our students do at least one program in some way, shape, or form. So we have a high percentage of kids that participate in athletics, as well as over 60 clubs. And I say 60 plus because that number changes daily. Similar to what Catherine said, students come to us with new ideas all of the time. So that number is always in flux in terms of what we offer for after school clubs for students. Want to turn it over to Brian?
Thank you, Melanie. So as TJ had mentioned a few minutes ago, one of the things that our high school has been fully invested in the past 2 years has been our NEAS, maintaining our accreditation through NEAS. And recently we received their report from the decennial visit, which commended the high school in 3 areas. And we wanted to highlight those because as we shared with you, and I apologize as it's allergy season, I'm struggling here. But as we shared with you 4 of our goals that we entered the year with, when they came for their NEAS visit, spent 3 days at our high school this fall, they identified these areas as strengths of our high school. The first one was that Daniel Hand High School has a positive, respectful, inclusive culture that promotes and supports diversity and identity and thought within the school community. And this again is something that was recognized by a group of educators from around our state. There were 5 individuals that spent those 3 days in our school who were trained by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. And again, that to them was a strength. And the if you go through the report in detail, I'm sure a lot of you have read it at this point. One of the things that it also credits, to this environment is our curriculum work, and I just wanted to highlight that. The second commendation that we included is a robust system and processes that provide interventions to support the learning needs of all students. This really touches upon what Melanie had just spoken about and the work of our SST group. Some other things that the report highlighted was the implementation of a co-teaching model in some of our math and English classes, along with our math and language arts coaches that we have to support our teachers in, again, delivering our curriculum to support our students. And again, we want to thank the board for a number of those things that you obviously have supported and provided for us in recent years. The last commendation that NEASC had highlighted within this area that we were talking about tonight was the wide variety of support systems provided to students. And our Helping Hallway provides incredible support to our students every day. In our Helping Hallway is our school social worker, our school psychologist, as well as a Massey Youth Family Service social worker. And with talking about the variety of supports that are provided, NEASC noted that we have an amazing partnership with Massey Youth Family Services, which we want to highlight. We also have ESS, which does tremendous work with our students in great need. In addition, they pointed out that we have a math lab, student assistance center, and we recently, as you're all aware, as you supported it, have added a college and career counselor. So these are all areas that have enabled us to support our students in really an ever-changing world, as we're all seeing how rapidly being an adolescent has changed in the past decade. So we wanted to highlight those things from the NEASC report, and once again, thank all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Back to Gail.
So I'm anticipating a question that I usually get from the board. And, what do we see as our future considerations and needs? And I just wanted to make sure it's on your radar that the American Recovery Funds supported a total of 2 positions for social work, one at Jeffrey and one at Ryerson. Those full-time positions have been definitely beneficial towards our students receiving those services. So that funding goes away. So we are anticipating requesting an ongoing support for those social worker positions. In addition to that, right now, currently, we have one school counselor that is at the elementary level. So that counselor goes between the 2 buildings and is scheduled. So on those moments where something unscheduled happens, it's difficult for a counselor to complete all of the groups that they're scheduled to do and deliver the lessons that we've now built into curriculum and respond to those crisis situations. So there has been a new grant application that has been submitted last week for an additional school counselor that would give us a short-term bridge until our 2 schools open in 2025. We did submit this application earlier in the first round, but only 12 districts were awarded any supports. This is the second round, and we are persistent. We learned that from our kids and our PD. In addition to that, we added to the second grant application a 0.5 social worker to help with the numbers that we're seeing in terms of needed support at Daniel Hand High School. So we, like at first you don't succeed with the school counselor, we're going to add another 0.5 social worker, and hopefully we're going to be able to see how that additional staffing supports our students during lunch waves in particular. That's a high need area.
So students pop over across the hallway.
Yeah, that's their unstructured time. So that's, if something's going on in their lives, that's a great time that they usually seek assistance. We have quite a bit of data on that. So those grant applications, we are waiting to hear, and we'll let you know when we hear. But across the district, in addition to those supports, professional development is so necessary to keep teachers on top of everything that's changing in education, not just academically, but social emotionally. And you could see through all of the trainings in this presentation, all of the stuff we do with our staff meetings too. And all of the ways that we make use of any sliver of time that we have. Plus all of the, what we call professional learning communities, the data that we review, those teams, it all takes an incredible amount of time. Years ago, we had a lot more professional development built into our calendar. The pandemic hit and we went really lean. We just focused on getting kids in classrooms. And now, you know, we really do see additional PD days being important. And that's also with increasing state mandates for trainings that are coming like crazy, that lean amount of time does not balance us out to stay as ahead as we would like. So I'm going to ask the team, did I miss anything? You guys will, or do you want to add anything? This is very fun. So any questions?
Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay.
I do have a question. Are coaches of sports teams and who volunteer their time to support students in any sort of extracurricular, are they part of the training around any of the options that are given? Do they understand? Do they have background and well, I'll just leave it at that.
There's some mandated trainings that they go through, but I'm going to turn to teaching and Dr. Cook because they're definitely more in the athletic realm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I could get this. I would say over half of our coaches are teachers that are
Right.
accessing all this, but there are certainly coaches that only coach for us, and then they're doing more along the lines of CPR
Yes.
and those types of training.
Right.
So, you know, that is something, you know, we should consider in the future, but I think, like I said, I'd say at least half are
Yeah,
teachers.
I do know, yeah,
And the state has several modules that
Yes.
coaches have to participate in
Yeah.
in order to get their certification as well.
right,
And we do require our volunteers to go through a process as well.
yeah,
To make sure first they're safe to work with students. But secondly, they have the knowledge necessary to, you know, go beyond their volunteering for a particular sport. Or
right,
even if they volunteer to support, let's say, the crew.
right,
For a musical, we have a lot
Exactly.
of parents who volunteer, which we appreciate incredibly, but they don't go through the entire list of supports that Gail and then the other administrators talked about, or not supports, excuse me, trainings that the certified staff and the other staff go through as well.
I do understand, you know, many times coaches who do volunteer their time or do, you know, help out with coaching, they have other jobs and whatnot. But it would be great to have just that common knowledge and that common thread that is woven into what we're doing throughout all the schools, but especially in the high school, to really have them on board with understanding the approaches and the way, the level of importance that we've placed on this.
It's a fair point. Mr. Carroll, since his transition this year, he has changed the approach to training coaches and
Yeah.
he has a coaches meeting required for all the coaches prior to each season. And goes over a lot of this content in great detail, so
Okay.
everyone is aware. And that change just in itself, because again, if you coach in the spring. And you go to the August 20th coaches meeting.
Yeah.
That's not as relevant and
Exactly.
it's easy to forget, so he's done a really nice job. With making sure the coaches are aware of expectations of taking care of our students.
Yeah.
And even like, as an example, like with students hurt, you know, sometimes. You can forget about them and try to pay a lot of attention, you know, to their emotional needs, just because. For a lot of students, high school is where it ends,
Right.
you know, for their athletic participation.
Can I put a sharper point on this? We brought in the athletic director, Chris Farrell, and I personally have been impressed with some of the new things that he's instituting. It'll take a while to work, you know. And I know for a fact that you and Chris spend time trying to promote positive sports culture I do see sports culture as being one of the areas where we have risk relative to everything we're trying to do that we talked about tonight. And I think it might be helpful in the future to adopt as part of a school improvement plan for the next year or the one after that, whatever. Including, especially since we have so many student athletes, including good sportsmanship as part of the SEL, like maybe a whole module of SEL. And really, not only for the student athletes, but our students writ large as spectators. There are times when, I understand it happens at every school, and I understand we're not any worse than anyone else potentially. But I do think that maybe kids aren't making the connection between let's be nice to ourselves, let's, have a good community in our school, and how we're projecting ourselves, when we play sports or get involved in extracurricular like competition. Maybe it's a math, team or whatever, and not only sports, and how we're portraying ourselves when we go to other campuses and play it, away games and our spectators away and all of that stuff, and even spectators in our own stands. I see that you guys are working mightily, and I greatly appreciate it. And I know it takes time to change culture in that regard. I just think it can be done. And I would encourage you to continue that good work and try to find ways to pull it into this, because the amount of effort, the amount of passion and investment I see in SEL is amazing. And I just want to step out to 30,000 feet and not on sports for a second and say, seeing this presentation and seeing what you guys have been doing over the past year especially gives me great confidence that our superintendent, our assistant superintendent, and all of you awesome building administrators really understand the priority and the gravity that we perceive as a board with the full-blown crisis that we're in for student mental health. And what you're doing is amazing. And I just want to thank you very much for all of the care and the brilliance you bring to this. Thank you.
So I just want to go back to the DESA, and this is kind of for everybody, the question. So I know that we're talking about how it flags certain traits or problems. So I guess I would like an example of like what it's flagging and how it differs from like grade to grade or school to school. And then after that, I have a follow-up question.
The categories are the same, school to school, grade to grade. It's administered K through 8. And it's administered twice a year. I'm
And
trying
these
to
are the
think of-
minutes that are like a minute or very small.
Right, so they're very mini, they're very, given, the teacher fills out the survey. So the students do not fill out the survey, it's not a student exam or anything like that. And they're used as, you're familiar with universal screens, like a universal screen, to help us to see or flag areas of strengths or weaknesses that we have across a cohort or in an individual student. And then we follow up. I think Martha and Catherine gave a highlight of a student that flagged that was not in any kind of a service plan already, and the process that goes along with that. So
When you say flag, like what is it flagging? Like that, what is the trait or the quality that they need to work on? Or like,
It's a holistic number, so it comes up as like a need. And then that means we take a closer look at it. So at our level, a team of teachers then might fill out 72 questions, so the full DESA. where we then can analyze in more depth. What questions did, as we tease that out, what are some of the traits that were strengths? What are some things to work on? And then the counselors and whoever works with the children, we create a plan that goes home with the parents and we say, these are the bullets of what we're going to do to address those areas of need.
Right, so I'm looking for an example of a trait.
So if you go to the first, I think one of Gail's first slides, you had them all listed on the left, didn't you?
Yeah. So they're right.
There we go. Those right there on the lower left,
Okay.
that's what they flag.
But how do they question, how is it presented to this?
Well, school, and then there's a.
Well, I understand, but.
So the question, like, they're not gonna say, how is a student in self-management? Instead, the question might
So the
read,
teacher fills out what she sees in the child has nothing. to do with
correct, the
it.
child has nothing to do with it, and the questions do not really use those words. But they've asked the teachers to reflect on maybe 6 statements about a student, and in their answers, they say, ooh, that self-awareness is flat.
It is not exact. It is not precise. We have feedback to the state that we do on a regular basis about the DESA. The reason why we're excited about the high school DESA is that one is students fill out the survey, it's a lot more comprehensive, and they get immediate feedback in those areas. So they can actually see their own self-perception of areas of strengths and weaknesses. So it is immediate to them, and then it's kind of collective to us as well.
I think I would just add, as Ms. Curran said, like, we're not waiting for that. It's not like, okay, we'll wait for the DESA and sit back, we're monitoring this all the time. And that's probably why those numbers are so low in terms of being flagged, because we are addressing things as they come up, throughout the year and using those supports that we talked about. I just want to jump in.
So my follow-up question then would be, in my experience with my child, I have always found that every teacher that she's had has been very aware of like every student in the class, like what their needs are, what they need work on. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, like, the DESA mini, is it actually flagging anything that you didn't already see?
Well, I think, again, I'll go to the Polson example. There was one student that they caught out of the students that they already knew. I think what I have a value in this, and we always wonder like how exact any assessment is in a moment in time, is flagging one student important enough that we're providing intervention in a timely manner, and it makes it worth the time to administer the survey. One of the things we talked about this year from last year's administration is last year we gave the DESA 3 times. We said we don't even have time to even implement our plan from the second time to actually see if there were any benefits. So this year we said we're giving it twice, and twice is enough for us to capture the numbers of kids that we do. The DESA is non-exact science, just as all the assessments that we talk about are non-exact sciences. But does it help us to see patterns that might exist in multiple classrooms as kids are exhibiting differently spring to winter? Yeah.
And do we find that if you compare, say, the 2 elementary schools, that the findings are similar? Like just based on age level are the same?
I think that's tough because there's 2 different programs in the elementary schools as well. One that's very much targeting social emotional needs for special education versus another one that is different types of disabilities. So there's a difference between the student bodies in that regard, slight difference. But I would say your data overall, when we look at it, is pretty similar. I don't see one big difference versus the other.
I think that's good. I'm done. Thank you.
So I think what's could be really interesting is the correlation between the DESA and the climate survey, right? To see that if everything that you're implementing in the school, and it seems like there's so much, is that are the parents seeing it? Do you know what I'm saying? Is there a parallel between the programs that are offered, like, Great Mondays and all this, and everyone feels inclusive, versus
what your percentages were, that 30% feel like, you know, there's clicks and not clicks, so does that make sense? Like, is there,
I think.
and what do you
the
do with the
tools-
climate survey in regards to implementing different plans at your school? That's maybe a better.
I think that the tools are different in terms of what they ask. And I would feel, and I'll ask you guys, I would feel that I'm making leaps in judgment to make a parallel between the climate survey and the DESA. They don't really talk to each other. It's kind of like having an SAT talk to an SBAC, or, you know, it's just a different kind of crafted assessment. However, I think that trends are always what we're looking at. So we look at trends over time. And the buildings look at those questions on the climate survey over time. And they see those answers and how those stats read. So of course, you're looking for improvement over time. But also you have a pandemic in the middle of it, which really kind of messes with all data. So their teams though pour through all data. And so do district teams. So their teams examine if it's a DESA or if it's a climate survey, and I think they spoke to their leadership teams doing that. So making sense of data and taking action on data is absolutely something we do on a regular basis. And I think that's what you're getting at, like what is better.
I think you hit the nail, yeah, I think you hit the nail right in the head at the end there in terms of that the climate survey connects with the school development plan. And so the middle school will look at those results and say, okay, so how do we take that 30% and reduce it, or how do we try and address that over time with the programming? So those are the types of conversations, and I'm sure we're comparing Polson to other schools and asking the same questions, they would have much higher than 30%. Like, I think, you know, that number to me for a middle school isn't overly alarming, but we want to bring that down.
I actually thought it was 2 out,
Really?
to be honest.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But. Yeah.
A comment, first of all. I greatly appreciate the presentation in terms of how comprehensive it is. And how we see a vertical alignment of starting in the early grades and helping young people understand their feelings and emotion and regulation and all the different levels. And I'm not minimizing any of that. There were a couple areas of comments that in particular stuck with me. One, you're presenting to the board, and all of this is real, and I know it impacts on kids, and I know it impacts in a positive way. And yet I sit here and I know that you know that the real driver in all this is relationships of your staff with children. You know, and it connects with Diane's statement in terms of, well, you know, the classroom teacher, you know, that I've seen knows every kid and has a sense of their strengths and their weaknesses. And, you know, those are, along with all the things you presented, that is a powerful aspect. The other is we move from the middle school to the high school. As the conversation increased about how we are deliberately trying to involve students to a greater degree in terms of understanding one themselves, but more importantly, understanding their peers. Because I'm struck with what I know is a reality that is a really tough one to crack, which is there are kids in our schools that are suffering from crises, and they're telling their peers. But their peers are burdened with that and sit there and go, if I tell an adult, they are all mandated reporters, and it's going either to the police or DCF or somewhere else. And so many times they don't. And I don't know what the solution is to that, but I think the road you're heading down in terms of involving students in having increased responsibility for looking out for each other and articulating pathways that maybe can get important information to people is the continuing challenge. You know, I just wanted to put it out there. You know, it's not a counterbalance of the great work that's being done. It's the continuing challenge in this district and every other district.
One other comment. So, one of the things I've noticed over the years and talking with other parents, other students, with regard to the two elementary schools, when you look at them separately, I think, the programs are really fantastic. And I really appreciate all the work that's being done, especially at that very young level, because I think it's so important. However, I have noticed that there is a difference in what happens between the two schools. And I understand that every student has a different need than another student because they're all individuals. However, I think if you look at, the cross section of Madison, that the geography of where you live, right, that's what determines which school you go to, shouldn't determine what programs that you are involved in or what is offered to you. So what I personally would like to see, and I know having talked to a lot of other people as parents, that it would be great if there was more
Horizontal alignment.
that, so that even like the terms that you use, like I know you both use the lunch bunch, but if even other things could be called the same thing, so that, these kids come together outside of school, even before they come together as a school in, community sports and churches, stuff like that. And I think it would be great if they had the same terminology, like we have, morning meeting, or we have, and that it's the same, whether you live in North Madison or South Madison, so that you're getting almost the same experience. And I know that right now it's not really that way. And I think especially going forward when we're with the big new school being built, and that there's feeling in the town of, well, the South Madison kids, they're gonna get the brand new school, but the North Madison kids are getting that renovated school. Like, we're gonna try and make it as equal and as equally good as possible, obviously not exactly the same. So I feel like the more the two elementary schools could be aligned in the programs and in the terminology, everything, what field trips are offered, like doing the same thing so that all the kids, K-3 get the same experience regardless of where you live. And I feel like that could be worked on.
So if I can speak to that, so I heard this concern on my entrance, and I've spent the last 3 years trying to figure this out, because I don't see the differences. I see as the same curriculum, I see the same training to teachers, I see the same terminology used in responsive classroom in terms of what's happening in the classrooms, in terms of what they are using. I do see different field trips that are sponsored by PTOs, and based on the location in town, one utilizes a park closer by, one utilizes different parks, and so I see those types of things. I see staff have different skill sets, capabilities, things they bring in. I see those after school programs that they spoke to. I see differences there. Some may offer, I see sometimes one PTO may do something different than another PTO. So I do see those differences, but I don't see that during the 8:50 to 3:20 time, the differences that I see. And in fact, I get parent concerns, and sometimes I look into it, and the other school, the school that they're saying isn't doing enough, is doing more than the school that they were citing as the example. Because I think what happens is our parents only know the one school really in depth, and then they do go like to a soccer game or to an event, and they talk to another family, and they hear. Usually it's like Facebook, you hear the really good things, they're going on there, and you're like, well, we do this, but this isn't as good or something like that. So I do think there's always a comparison. Anytime you have two, it's almost easier to have three or one. But I haven't been able to see that. Like, I do get those concerns, and I talk to both principals, and usually what I find out is that, it's like a specialty or some additional piece offered, but it's not the core program that we have more than control over. Just wanted to share
And
that.
I think I've noticed that when I get the letters from them, it seems everybody's kind of doing a lot of the same stuff.
Can I add to that? Just because
Okay, if I can speak for both, but this is something that Kelly and I work on weekly, you know, just thinking of this week, we collaborated on. When do you have the Lions Club coming to give dictionaries? When is the Chamber of Commerce coming to do the read along? So it's something that we're very cognizant of. As Dr. Cook stated in his examples, are there things that are different because we are different buildings and have different staff? Yes, but you know, if there was anything in our presentations tonight, the core of what we do, that you have concerns about, please let us know the specifics, because we feel the same way that you do, that we want all Madison kids to have the very best experience.
And I think some of it just might even be how it's presented or the terminology used. So like, trying to come up with an example here. So like you have, you know, peer buddies, classroom buddies at Ryerson, buddy classes, reading and math buddies. It sounds similar, but I'm wondering if, like, in the way that it's presented to the parents, maybe in the, you know, backpack announcements, whatever, if maybe they were, and maybe it's just like a PR thing, you know, that it sounds and looks exactly alike, because, you know, throughout the entire time that my daughter has gone to school, I have heard it, you know, whether it was in school, out of school, and I totally get that, you know, PTOs are their own thing, and they come up with their own creative ways to raise funds and have activities for kids. And I don't think that that's not really what I'm talking about, because that's, you know, outside of what you do. So, but I have heard consistently that field trips are not the same. That, you know, one school is doing more field trips than the other. And this is coming from the people who lead the field trips, like from Bauer Park, and I have actually a schedule, and it shows that Ryerson doesn't have as many field trips as Jeffrey. And whether or not I get sometimes it's weather related, it gets canceled, whatever. There was a busing incident before we could get a bus, but I think that is a big thing, because, you know, everybody loves field trip. But if the community is feeling like that one school is not getting the same experiences as the other, I think it's going to be even more of an issue when we switch schools. You know, I think it's just going to be magnified just because of the feelings, I think, of the people in the town. So I would like to see, even if, again, it's just a PR thing and a wording and using the exact same terminology, so that, you know, when mom from North Madison talks to mom from South Madison, like, oh yes, they have classroom buddies and they had, you know, this special day, and it's more similar or exactly the same, I think it will come across more equal.
And we can certainly relook at our field trips too, because there should be at some, you know, might not be the exact same ones again due to location, but that equity is there. Happy to look at that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I want to apologize a little bit, because I don't want to seem like I'm negative. I'm not. I think especially our high school students are in a world right now where they're perceptive to adults behaving badly in our society. And so I think some of that may be playing out, and may only be playing out among a small minority of students, numerically speaking. And I greatly appreciate all the headwinds that you guys are facing at every level, but especially at the, Holston and high school. It's not easy, and that's why this work is so important. And again, I'm sure that we're doing a lot more than other districts in this regard. And thank you so much for your work, for your passion and your commitment to this, because it will literally save lives. It will. You can't teach a student who's committed suicide. You can't get something bad back in the bottle if it happens because a kid was bullied. And I think you guys recognize this, you take it to heart. And I just want to thank you again for all the great work you're doing in this regard. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm ready with my board member comment. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, that's the one.
Oh my gosh, was he ever on? He always had a good meeting. What was that? Yeah.
I
Oh,
saw you things.
yeah, so,
Was he on?
No.
oh, I thought you saw him on.
I'm making
it.
You're making it up, okay.
All right, so to get back to the regular portion of the meeting, that'll be the end of the superintendent's report. Board member comments, I would like to just open that up by pointing out that Administrative Assistance Day is tomorrow. Thank you. And I wanted to thank Zoe, who's the only person in the room who falls under that classification. Thank you for everything. Very supportive. It'd be greatly-
And that's hiding behind the screen.
Yeah.
That's by design, Dan.
Let's give her a reprieve in the morning.
Yeah.
Let her come in a little.
I'm at- so-
Yes.
So I think Diane had a comment, and any other board member comments?
So my comment is. When we had the report about special education. It was a standalone meeting and I thought it was perfect. It was appropriate. We could spend as much time and ask as many questions as we want. We didn't keep them here for 14 hours. And I think something like this, it's obviously a focus of ours. And I feel like that we should have done it the same way as well. Because that was a considerable chunk of time and they're sitting there like waiting to start and then. I just think that any presentation that's going to be over 20 minutes should not be in a regular board meeting. It should have its own presentation. And that's my comment. Oh, wait, I got one more. Sorry, I forgot. So my other comment is with regard to the ESSER funding. And it's, I don't need the answers right now, but we talked about it before. We know that the ESSER funding that funded our school social workers is ending, and I brought that up at the end of the presentation, which is why I'm mentioning it now. So I would like to have, because I know you gave to me before, I can't find it, like each school, what each school has, like school psychologist, social worker, how many FTEs of each. And then I also want to know how can we, and I asked this before, how can we evaluate or get data sort of on usage of social workers and school psychologists? Like there's no like RVU, billable RVUs that they use. So I think it would be helpful information though, because I would imagine, that, and I know that we have more social workers at the high school, but the usage, maybe right now it's heavier at, Folsom than it is at Brown or at Jeffrey than at Ryerson. And so I don't think we can get an accurate idea of how many, FTEs we need of that fall under social worker or school psychologist until we know usage.
We can certainly talk to that. It's not gonna be as clean as you're probably hoping, but what I will say is, so some students may see a social worker 3 times a week and one may see a social worker once every other week. Do you know what I mean? So there's like,
I understand that,
student count is
but
always
it's
the
like,
same.
if one, social worker is seeing the same 3 students and it's filling up the schedule, then those students are, in my opinion, sort of flagged that they need outside, like we can't be held responsible to give all of their needs. We do some, but it should be supplemental. So I guess, and I'm not saying that that's happening. I'm just using it as an example. So, do we have a need where like, there are 30 students, because we know during COVID, like there was such a
a shortage of that type of help. And people were waiting a very long time just to get their first appointment with a social worker, et cetera. And I think that the demand became even greater on the schools because of that, and that's fine.
Yeah, I can work with
Yeah.
this.
But just sort of
Yes.
some sort of data, something, more, solid to work with to see where the usage is, where the need is greater than others. That's the last comment that I.
Any other comments? Maureen, do you have any comments?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Sorry, 1 second. Shannon. Oh, I think she said.
Maureen, try it again.
It says, no, I don't, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I don't know, we didn't hear, but.
It was muted here, so I wouldn't get interference while they were
We saw
presenting.
The text,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Any audience response to information presented in Zoom land?
No.
No, okay, thank you. Board of Selectmen liaison report, Scott is unable to attend tonight. Board committees and liaison updates, curriculum and student development, Steve.
We haven't met since the last meeting. Our next meeting will be May 9th.
Thank you. Facilities Committee, Emily.
Yep, the facilities committee had a special brief meeting this evening. We had updates from Bill and Felicia Smith-Gulick about a project for Green Hill Road signage at Polson and the high school. They're working together on directional signs that will be both on campus and on the street. They shared examples. If anyone is interested, I can show you afterwards. They'll be using year-end funds for the signage. Work will be done over the summer. Really, the goal is to make all the signage uniform, show where fields are and where buildings are. No change to handicapped or sidewalk directional signs. And we talked a little about that. Focus right now is at the on-campus signs. The exterior signs on the roads are a little bit different and more challenging, but signage, site, all that. But that's moving along. And then Bill gave an update on the Brown School project. So all of our folks there, Tecton, Colliers, JW Mountford, they're working, they're meeting regularly, work is plugging along. They have made some adjustments to the scope. They've added operative windows, which are bigger and openable to the project. So that obviously is helpful. And then they plan to upgrade additional bathrooms to ADA compliance beyond the original scope. The money is already in the budget, but it was just sort of a matter of clarifying which additional bathrooms they were going to do. And you'll also hear about this in the the finance committee report. While the work is being done, they would like to upgrade the main front office at Brown while construction's underway. One big thing we talked about is having an adequate conference room space that can fit people, especially at elementary level, it's for the same like team meetings. Some additional office space. There will be additional administrators in a larger school building, and improving the nurses area and the bathroom. So that additional funding is about $377,000, which we have year-end funds to cover that, which I'll get to in my next report. And then finally, Bill just gave us an update. He's working with Tim Lunn on planning for possibly a 40 by 60 storage building at the far end of the Daniel Hand High School back parking lot for additional storage. There is some space there. At this time, Bill is just starting the planning process. The principals and superintendent are supportive of starting this process, not asking for funding now, but they'll be looking for alternative funding, permitting, getting the work started. And the principal would decide what goes into that storage unit. It sounds a lot about theater and music supplies at this time, so they'll keep us posted. But we did share the support from the facilities committee for him to move forward with that planning process. And there was no public comment. We adjourned 30 minutes later. I don't know if anyone from the committee wants to add anything or comment.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay, stay right there. Finance Committee.
So Galen's not here, so I chaired the meeting finance committee on his behalf this evening. We had primarily one item, Stacey Novitz gave us an update on end of year funds. So as of this moment, projected available funds are $585,378. The biggest portion of that, about $440,000, is in HR salaries and subs. As you know, some positions have not been filled over the course of the year. And then we talked about projected deficits and needs. So we did, the finance committee, we did share our endorsement for line transfers in 2 areas, which I'm going to talk about. And the third one, that'll be coming to the board for approval at our next meeting. So $30,000 deficit in general and legal. We have a deficit at this point of $141,000 in special education. As you all know, we have a special ed reserve fund, which is $350,000 at this point. So we propose transferring $41,000 at this point. We know that this is a moving target for special ed surplus funds and deficit funds. And then also transferring what I mentioned previously, $377,400 for the Brown School improvements to the main office. So the finance committee did support that, and that will be coming to the full board for a vote at our next meeting. And then Dr. Cook just gave a quick update about, as you all remember, the $75,000 reduction. This will come to us at the second meeting in May, and $50,000 savings for final electricity and liability insurance, and then $25,000 out of retirement savings. We did not have any public comment. We met for about 30 minutes. If anyone wants to add anything from the committee, Christine and I represented. It was a good meeting. You and a great meeting. It's not my forte.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So the surplus is $585,378, and if it's not used in line item transfers, then at the end of the fiscal year, it gets turned over to the town, is that correct? So if you were looking at the numbers that you gave, you said 141,000 from special ed, you would like to have a line item transfer and not take it from the special education fund to cover that, correct?
Just 41,000.
Oh, just 40, I'm sorry.
Yep. Yep, just to sort of leave some wiggle room in the reserve fund.
And then, so 30,000. Yep. You want to go to cover the legal expenses.
Yep.
And 377,000 to cover the
Brown School.
Brown School main
Yep.
office period. So then that would leave still available funds at the
Yep.
end.
So Stacy did share with us a list of potential requests, which is an ongoing list. They sort of throw items in there. So I do have that and I can share that with you. So there was, DHHS Health Office Vision Screener would be $8,000, Jeffrey Math Bridge consumables, Polson PE wellness equipment, furniture for the Daniel Hand Bridge. So other items that we'll see where things end up, because they said they're waiting
Still
on a few.
outstanding things.
Yeah, and there's some end of year
Maybe we
updates, right? So we could still decide before the budget closes what we might want to move
Paper
around.
towel.
Paper
Yeah,
towels. what have
And
you.
we, again, the special ed is a moving target.
Yeah, right.
That may end up being more in the hole than the 41,000, and we might need to transfer money into that
I think
in order to
so.
preserve the special.
So then, I guess my follow-up question is, if there is actually anything that's not spent, would we consider the way that we have a special education fund for that rainy day for those unexpected expenses? Can we have anything like that, say, for facilities?
We do have some funding for facilities. What Bill typically does is spend a year in arrears almost. So he'll spend this year's the money that he gets on July 1, he typically holds that because it's on the town side. And so he's able to expend the money from a year back because of things like Daniel Hand HVAC, and then it's a $50,000 to $75,000 bill. So he does have some money in that as well.
But can we like
add to
We
and
could,
have a fund?
we could increase the funds. It does require the approval of the boards. We could most likely not be able to do it for this budget, but absolutely, if that's something the board's interested in, we could pursue that by starting to have conversations with the.
It seems like when we have an excess and it gets turned back to the town, and then we find that we have a special facilities need, then we just have to request it back from the town. It seems like it would be much more prudent and easier and quicker, more efficient to just have our own funds. You know, and we know we're gonna have facilities needs. I mean, that's a given.
Or use it on what we need.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Generate,
Generate.
June 30th.
And buy forward supplies and stuff like that,
Or whatever.
you know, supplies, but
Favorite.
But in order to create a reserve fund, it needs to get approval through the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance as well. So there's that, and they won't necessarily support it. And
They
then-
might.
Yeah, they might, absolutely. And there's another concept that is bouncing around the legislature right now. You may have seen this proposal, because I know you pay attention to the CABE legislative service. There's been a request that has been supported by CABE and CAPS to allow districts to roll over a certain percentage, like 1 or 2% of their budget amount from that year's approved budget to go toward the next year. I don't know if we would pursue that kind of a strategy, even if it were to pass. But.
Because there are certain
something
districts
that's
that
out
actually can do that now, but we're not one of them.
We're able to do up to 2%. It's moved from 1% to 2%. That's basically Liz's. Because that is on our side. So we have control over that. We could increase that. I think when the board did that, it was at 1%. It's now up to 2%. So we could do that. And I'd be supportive of that. I think that would be a good move to look at whether it's facilities or general. I think my sense is that from what I've heard is that the Board of Selectmen at the time wanted to have it specific. And so they understood special ed, so I think they were good with that, but.
Just because we're looking at this big facilities ask and with the budget
Yeah.
constantly increasing, you know.
As Mary Ann said, I think we're gonna be in a position for the foreseeable future that between work that has to happen at Brown and work that has to happen at Wilson, we'll be able to identify projects in advance, like if it was. And it's not, but if it was a $3 million positive variance we were running, I think we'd be able to come to the board and say we have projects.
We'd
like
be
that.
serving coffee.
Yeah, right.
And cookies.
It's a good meeting.
And pizza. Okay, well, that was just.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, but
Had to keep us here past midnight.
Yeah. Any other questions for Finance? Personnel Committee, Maureen.
Hi, we haven't met since the last meeting, so that's my update. No update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Policy Committee, Diane.
We met tonight. We went through a whole bunch of the policies in the 5,000 series, which is the student series. And you will be seeing them at the next Board of Ed meeting, where we recommended not only will they be rescinded, but to waive the second reading. And so there will be 9 of them. And then we looked at some 9,000 series policies, which is our bylaws, and did some work on that, which we have to hold off on because a lot of the bylaws are linked to other bylaws, and if we don't review them all together, then you can't rescind one, replace it because you rescinded something else. So that will come back to us. We'll work on that at the next policy meeting. And then we did vote to move forward 3 more policies regarding computer equipment and technological devices. And so those will come forward to the board at the next meeting for 2 reads. So it'll be a first read. And then for tonight, we have action items from policy. The motion to adopt policy 4241, absence of school staff, and policy 4300, recognition of service awards, second read and action items tonight. And the board.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Learn Liaison, Mary Ann.
Okay, I did not go because I was at a funeral, but I do have minutes for everybody.
Great.
So I will pass these for him. And it was a long meeting, it looks like. I read through it all.
Going on over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks.
Okay, and while you're there, Mary Ann, Town Marijuana Advisory Committee.
Okay, so I haven't heard in a while, but I got in touch with Bruce Wilson and I went to the town hearing last evening. They had a town hearing on it. A few people stood up and spoke, most not in favor. One man very much in favor. The survey that was done, did anyone here fill it out?
Yeah.
Okay, so we all filled it out. Well, there were 911 responses. The largest group, I just did an overall thing, but you can go online. It's not online yet. I looked to see if it was. It should be online within a couple of days, so you can look at the survey. But there were 911 responses. The largest group was, believe it or not, 65 and older. There was 58% opposition from the survey. Many concerns, most of them with children's welfare, gateway drugs. Public comments were mostly oppositional to it. At the end of the meeting, the Board of Selectmen, each one of them went around and they were all not in favor of a dispensary. So the ordinance will come about against having a dispensary in Madison. They just have to shore up all the terms and define it and make it more specific, and then it will come to a vote.
Will it come to a referendum or?
No, I asked that, and I said, so you don't really, no, it would be an ordinance, but an ordinance. So the town will decide and we'll decide. Not-
I think that's, I want to thank you for your work on that committee as our liaison. Regardless of what my personal feelings are, and I do recognize, like medical marijuana is important
Although,
and that sort of thing.
let me
but
say,
that's
that's
different.
gonna be, and that's going to be addressed in the ordinance will continue. That is not gonna be not allowed.
Yeah, of course, there wouldn't be a vote.
But I don't, farming will not be, and it will be specific as to where you can smoke and not smoke.
I just want to say with my board member hat on, there's going to be dispensaries nearby for adult users to go and get it. I think it's probably better for our student population to not have a dispensary in town.
And most of the people that spoke to that said exactly the same.
Thank you. Thanks for your service on that committee.
At least, we've gotten somewhere.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, committee reports are over. Action item number 9. I need a motion to adopt. Yeah.
I still haven't read it.
World language. AP.
Actually,
Hang on a second. AP. Oh, that is, okay. Action item 9, I need a motion to adopt the AP US History textbook, Give Me Liberty.
someone. Second.
And seconded by Emily, okay. Thank you. Any discussion? Any discussion? No, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's an aye, opposed nay, any abstentions? Okay, motion carries 8-0. Thank you. Action item, I need a motion to adopt the world language textbooks, Signing Naturally, for American Sign Language 1, Integrated Chinese 1, Simplified Characters textbook and workbook, Mandarin 1, and Subarani for Latin 1 and Latin 2.
Someone. Second.
And seconded by Kathy. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you. I need a motion to approve for action item 11, the disposal of electronic waste that was included in our packet. Anybody know? Okay, Emily, thank you. Any second for that?
Second.
Kathy, thank you.
That was me.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Came from that direction. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just wanna, I know that Art always does this, but just the electronic waste that they gleaned everything they possibly can from it, yes. I just like to make this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of disposing that electronic waste, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you. We have an action item from the policy committee, motion to approve the following policies. Number 4241, absence of school staff, and number 4300, recognition of service awards. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
By Diane,
Maureen, second.
second by Noreen.
Gotta be quicker.
Sorry. Any discussion on these? Discussion, no, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? That's 8-0, motion carries. Thank you. Action item 13, motion to approve the minutes of the April 4th, 2023 Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Diane, thank you. Second? I think more, Mary Ann, it looked like a yawn, but it sounded like a second. Any discussion or corrections or anything? No, any, all in favor of approving the minutes of April 4th? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Abstention or nay?
This is nothing, I wasn't here.
Oh, okay, so abstention.
I know.
You can actually vote on it, but a lot of
That's
people
why
abstain.
I'm not saying it.
Yeah, oh,
So seconding doesn't mean that you are even in support of the motion, it's just seconding to get onto the floor for. Oh.
Yeah.
I could do.
all right.
Only if you are, if you make the motion to it, then you can't speak against it. But if you second it, you don't have to support it.
All right, so I'm marking for the record, Christine abstained and the rest of the vote was 7-0.
So much more today.
Robert's rules. All right, does anybody have any requests for future agenda items? Future agenda items? No? Yes, yeah, no, it worked out well. Meetings and dates of importance are attached. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Diane,
Second.
second by
Emily. I fell asleep.
to adjourn.
Already adjourned.
Yes, the 10.